Hello, and welcome to the East Africa Business Podcast. This show is all about showcasing entrepreneurs who are building businesses in this exciting part of the world. From reading high-level articles about the region, it can be difficult to really understand what's going on, and so my hope is that these interviews somewhat bring it to life, as well as stoking your curiosity to go find out more. On that, do take a look in the archive for more episodes that we've done, but for now, let's enjoy the rest of this funky intro music and then get started with the show. So where are we, Emilian?
We're at Mwatate Medical Center in the outskirts of Nairobi.
Outskirts of Nairobi, cool. And this is one of your clinics that you work with?
It's one of our clients.
This week, we're featuring what has to be one of my favourite business models featured to date. One of the dominant themes in East Africa is that individuals and businesses don't have the cash to afford products and services that would earn them more money and make their lives better. To open up access to electricity, off-grid solar systems are now commonplace, provided on a pay-as-you-go basis. This model is being adopted in other markets too, such as cooking fuel, irrigation pumps, and TVs. Where it becomes especially powerful is, in my opinion, if the financing can be for a revenue-generating asset.
So our business model is, again, identifying those high-tech diagnostic devices somewhere else in the world, bringing them here, placing them, so distributing or placing them in clinics, linking them into a tech platform that we're building, connecting them, being able to turn them on and off, collecting data.
The new owner gets a top-of-the-range piece of kit and is able to pay for it through the additional income they earn from it. This is what Ilara Health have done for medical diagnostics. Traditional machines to do, say, ultrasounds cost tens of thousands of dollars. Internationally, the industry for diagnostic equipment is evolving. Ilara Health take the most advanced modern equipment, often smartphone-based, that offer the same results and cost only a few $1,000s, and then provide them to peri-urban medical clinics in Kenya. As they can track usage, the device is then paid back each month out of the increased earnings. The result? Routine ultrasound tests become available to a local population at an affordable rate, rather than spending hours to travel into the city to have one. Medical clinics can grow their business, and Ilara Health has a sustainable business model. Emilian also has a number of top tips on starting any business in Africa, which come from over 20 years of him running and investing in companies on the continent. He's a real font of knowledge for anyone interested in the region.
I used to run Rocket Internet, the parent company of Jumia, in a couple of markets between China, Russia, India, South Africa, and later in Nigeria. Built one venture with Naspers funding in South Africa, and ran Groupon South Africa for a year.
Anyway, I'll shut up now so that we can get on with the interview and Emilian can explain more. Cool. So we're here today with Emilian from Ilara Health. Emilian, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So to get started, can you tell us a bit about you and a bit about Ilara Health?
Sure. So I'm Emilian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ilara Health. And we make diagnostics more affordable, accessible, and accurate in Africa. I'm an entrepreneur, but also an investor. I spent the past 4 years building and growing a growth stage technology-enabled venture capital firm focused on Africa, mainly in between South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, and Egypt. Prior to that, I used to run Rocket Internet, the parent company of Jumia, in a couple of markets between China, Russia, India, South Africa, and later in Nigeria. Built one venture with Naspers funding in South Africa, and ran Groupon South Africa for a year.
Got it. Cool. And when did you start Ilara Health?
So we started Ilara Health is a result of over a year, actually a year and a half, of market research around how to build a sustainable healthcare venture in Africa and emerging markets. We've launched commercially in March this year. I spent half of my time last year researching the primary healthcare sector in multiple markets in Africa as well as India and Latin America to find the right business model to build here.
Got it. And if I'm right, you've settled on basically lease financing for diagnostic tests, is that?
Yeah, so I mean, starting with a problem, so 70% of medical decisions require diagnostics, such as blood tests. But there are half a billion, 500 million people in Africa who struggle to access or afford a simple blood test. So I've, as I mentioned to you, over a year, I visited hundreds and hundreds of health clinics across the continent, and quality is shockingly poor. So I remember even meeting this lady in one of the clinics, and she actually lost her child from pregnancy complications because she just couldn't afford an ultrasound before birth. But thanks to advances in artificial intelligence, robotics, technology, there are companies around the world which create new diagnostic devices which are much smaller, lower cost, and can work directly at the point of care in the doctor's office, providing results in minutes. So at Ilara Health, we do 4 things, to get back to your question. So we partner with those companies and we integrate their devices into our technology platform. Number 2, we distribute this bundle of devices into the peri-urban and rural clinics where 70% of the patients live. So we're not in Nairobi itself, but we're outside the main city, in the suburbs. We also offer financing, which is very important because those doctors cannot afford to buy even a much cheaper and smaller diagnostic device upfront. Number 3, we charge the doctors an affordable subscription or paper test as they use the equipment. And we continue helping those doctors growing their revenue by providing new diagnostics devices and new services.
Got it. Okay. So you you were always interested in healthcare, were you? Was that? It seems like if you went and spent a year going to lots of clinics, that was your kind of
exactly. So I'm super passionate. Actually, I'm very passionate about healthcare for myself, and it's been a while. I'm very into prevention and early detection of diseases. I go every 6 months to see a doctor in Cape Town, and I do 20-30 blood tests. To just
what's a 20-30 blood test?
So anywhere between starting with the basic ones, between all the biochemistry, the lipid function, cholesterol, up to more complex tests, tumor markers, hormones, just to make sure that if anything goes wrong, I can detect it and I can do something about it. And this accumulated with a reasonably healthy lifestyle, doing a lot of sports, eating very healthy, sleeping at 7-8 hours a night. So that's my goal. My goal is to make sure that I can live healthy and hopefully longer. So longevity is one of the things I'm looking into. However, in Africa, we're actually not talking about longevity, we're talking about survival and in those regions. So I've been looking for a while on how to apply my interest in healthcare into a sustainable business model, tackling the basic needs that a patient in a suburban area around the main cities in Africa would need. And people, during those hundreds of visits of clinics, one of the first questions that we ask doctors is what are the main reasons someone comes to see you? And there are 4 or 5 reasons. People come with upper or lower respiratory infections, and ideally they would need a full hemogram to make sure to identify if those infections are viral or bacterial, so to see if they take antibiotics or not. Then digestive infections, they will need a stool test. Then urinary tract infections, they need a urine test. Then a high percentage of people here are pre-diabetes or diabetics. Some of 2/3 don't even know. Same for cardiac diseases. And they would need for diabetes, they would need not a glucose, because glucose, a basic glucose test cannot identify, but rather, the spikes can obviously influence the test, but you need an HbA1c test, which is a bit more complex, which is an average over 3 months of your blood sugar. Same for cardiac diseases, you need a cholesterol, you need a lipid function test. And another reason is pregnancy. Women need 1 to 2, it's recommended that they get 1 to 2 ultrasounds before pregnancy. And the problem again, those tests are normally done in a lab, which labs are far away, they're expensive, and people would incur costs and time to go, and that's where the care breaks down. Right. And if someone sees a doctor and the doctor refers the person to a lab, half of the people won't go.
Okay. And so if I'm right, one of the innovative things that you've spotted is, part of the reasons that these clinics currently have the ability to do these tests is that the machines are too big and they're too expensive.
The machines are expensive, so those clinics don't, they all make some revenue. The problem is that the consultation fees are usually too small to make the doctor survive. So it's 100 to 200 shillings, so $1 to $2. Every single small clinic will have a pharmacy or a dispensary where they sell medication to their patients, and they make significant revenue out of it. And they would love to provide diagnostics, but they can't buy the machines because they don't have enough steady revenue to buy the machines.
So typically, but am I right that part of what you're doing is you actually identified innovations within these machines and then brought them here? So
exactly. So typically, I'll give you an example. So exactly what we're doing, we identify the latest technology developments in those 3, 4, 5 areas, which equate into much smaller and much cheaper but high-tech devices, which can be run remotely through a cloud and which can sit at a point of care. So typically an ultrasound, right? A full-size ultrasound made by one of the big brands would cost between $25,000 and $35,000. Miniature portable ultrasound made also by some of those super innovative high-tech companies would cost a fraction of this, maybe 4 times cheaper, 5 times cheaper. But those manufacturers are actually startups sitting somewhere in the US, in China, in India, or somewhere else in Asia, far from Africa, with no or little plans to come to Africa today because they've just launched. They've just raised money, they've gone through an FDA or CE approval, and they have enough market where they are. So what we do, we go and then approach those companies at a founder's level and to try to convince them to let us bring their products into Africa.
Do they have any resistance to that? I mean, like maybe from a branding perspective or from a...
So obviously it's easier to talk to companies which are startups because they're used to they're much more flexible compared to a big corporate which may not have a direct interest to come immediately here or which will be more difficult to work with.
Good. Okay, so you've kind of got this quite good dynamic by the fact that you're kind of, as you say, founder to founder, talking to these startups. They obviously then are able to do it this little bit cheaper. But I mean, let's say it now costs $5,000. You're saying that the clinic is still not able to pay
exactly. That. The clinic's even a device which is 4 to 5 times cheaper than the full size one, the doctor cannot buy it. One of the main reasons is when you look into the revenues of those clinics, 1/3 of them are approved or accredited by the National Health Insurance, and they get a certain capitation money on a monthly basis based on a number of patients they record. They choose to go to that clinic. This capitation money comes in batches and comes late. So the biggest issue of those clinics is actually cash flow management. It's less as at the end of the year they would make money, but they would not have money today. They also usually don't qualify for credits because either they don't have, their balance sheet is very thin. Banks would ask them for a collateral, which is usually 2x or even more the value of the loan. And there are some digital lenders which may be able to lend, but digital lenders would ask the clinic a certain size of the daily or monthly revenue coming through their digital channels, M-Pesa. And if the clinic does not have either or assets or significant digital revenue, they would not qualify for credit. So what we try to do is to, first of all, match them with a lender, if we can, based again on their digital revenue or on their total revenue. And if we cannot, then we look into potentially lending to them ourselves on balance sheet.
Oh, so it's not, the default is not for you to do
the default. We're not a lender actually. We're rather an enabler. We're a technology company. So our business model is again identifying those high-tech diagnostic devices somewhere else in the world, bringing them here, placing them, so distributing or placing them in clinics, linking them into a tech platform that we're building, connecting them, being able to turn them on and off, collecting data.
When you say being able to turn them on and off, does that mean being able to turn off the ultrasound?
So typically, if obviously the device becomes a collateral for a loan. So if the clinic in this case stops paying for any reason, we could potentially turn off the device. Obviously, now it's not our goal. Our goal is to make sure that we have that. Yeah, okay. But our goal is to make sure that we can. Our goal is to make those clinics making more revenue, and we work with them. We're flexible, and we try to understand how can we help the clinics making more money, because we believe that if those clinics make more revenue, they can deliver better health eventually. We may not be able to completely control the prices today to make the ultrasound cheaper or the blood test cheaper. We hope that we will, but in the future. But at least we can bring accessibility and rapidity of those tests, and more revenue for the clinic. And by doing this, we also look into how to streamline the processes of the clinic. Once we're in the clinic, we're the foot in the door. We see their financials, we see their processes, we understand how do they order medication, and we, both myself and my co-founders, come from a consulting background. So we also sometimes put our consulting hats and think, how can we improve the processes of our clinics?
Yeah. Okay. Because one of the things you just touched on is this idea of you're giving people a revenue generating asset.
Exactly.
So it's not like you're seeing somebody's getting financing and they're going to go off and consume it, or because one of the things I always find with financing is, yes, it's all well and good to be given some money and then being told you need to pay back 10% in 30 days or whatever, but is there a path towards people legitimately increasing their revenue?
A massive path. Let's take the ultrasound. The model in ultrasound, if a clinic receives a pregnant woman and the clinic does not have an ultrasound machine in most of the cases, the doctor will refer that pregnant woman to a third-party ultrasound clinic. The lady would pay 1,500 shillings for a pregnancy ultrasound, and the referral clinic will receive anywhere between 200 and 500 shillings as a referral fee. In our model, if we place an ultrasound machine on the clinic desk, now the doctor can perform an ultrasound, can receive that full price, which is 1,500, even more if the clinic is accredited by NHF, so up to 3,000 shillings, full revenue. And they will be able to pay us back a certain amount a month, which will be somehow the equivalent of a 2 years loan at a reasonable interest rate.
Okay.
So this interest rate actually includes a market interest rate plus a service fee, as if we're to be able to count the number of tests. We approximate it for now. but we always look to make it affordable for the clinic. Would not place an ultrasound in a clinic where we know pertinently that they would not be able to get enough patients, therefore per day or per month for ultrasound or for other blood tests. Therefore, they would not able to pay back the loan.
As I say, so is there is pent up demand for this? It's not like you're suddenly going to put these ultrasounds machines in and the local population are going to be like, well, I can't afford this, or I'm not going to.
There is a demand. There is a demand is there. It's just concentrated and it takes time and logistics to go and then do those tests.
So this setup is basically opening up the market in terms of it making it easier to access these tests. And as such, that's going to grow the market, and
eventually, hopefully, more affordable.
Yes, got it. Okay. It's slightly different actually. You've had a lot of experience running companies across East Africa. What are some of the lessons that you're taking from your past that you're applying to running Ilara?
Actually, a couple of lessons. One is every successful business I've seen in Africa has a financing component, and their business is distributing fruits and veggies in a market. They lend eventually to those merchants. They lend cash or they lend products. Their business is distributing FMCG products. They also end up lending. They are there are a number of asset leasing businesses, lending for people to buy or to lease a motorbike, a commercial asset. What my feeling is that the successful the businesses amongst the 600 or 700 companies I've seen in my venture capital career across around 4 years across the continent, most of the successful ones have a fintech component, even if they are health tech or education or distribution or logistic or something else. There's always a fintech or a financial component. So what we do here, we build health technology business, but with a strong fintech component through the lending and through the cash collection from the clinics, which we try to automate. The second learning from asset leasing is if we can avoid to have those assets on our balance sheet, so match the existing clinics with the lenders, it's better. I know that we won't be able to do in every single case, but our first approach is enabling the clinics to access lending. And only if we believe that the clinic cannot access lending for a specific reason, but if we still assess them from a credit perspective as a good payer, then we lend the assets to them. Another learning is, and if I put my investor hat, the market is massive. We can always think there are 5-6 markets around where the needs are the same. However, what we build here is a strong operational business. So some of the things we build need time. We need time to learn how to scale this business in an effective manner, in a profitable manner, before we go to another market, even another city. So we have enough clinics around Nairobi where we need to focus. So focus is super, super important. Cash management for ourselves, right? I mean, one of the main reasons of startups failing is they run out of money because they spend too fast, too soon.
Okay, so these are very good, and I sort of get that from a investor top down. How to do it. But I think what's also interesting about you, Milian, is that you've also had experience being the operator. So I'm interested in, can you perhaps give us an idea of how many people are currently working at Ilara? What are some principles or the way in which you've decided to run the day-to-day operations of it? Sure.
So we're small, a nimble team for now. We're 3 co-founders. We have 2 salespeople. We have a couple of advisors whom we may onboard on a full-time position soon. We have a medical advisor / chief medical officer. We bring 2 other people now, one on operational finance and another one on corporate development, on a specific new project that we look into those clinics. So we try to keep the team small for now. And indeed, each of us does a number of things. There's no, I do the CFO, the credit manager, the HR, the legal, while my co-founder Aman focuses on product, and my co-founder Hannes focuses on sales and operations. Very important is the dynamics in the team. I've seen so many startups failing because founders misalignment.
What does that mean? Misalignment?
Founders may be misaligned in terms of goals of the company, and then
okay. So one founder wants this to happen, and the other things.
So luckily we're aligned, and we will continuously work on communication, spending time together, making sure that we focus on the same goals, and going very fast. Speed is super important because what we miss is actually time. And that's our most, I would say, scarce resource before we need to raise the next round. So we try to achieve, we have very specific goals. We're even implementing OKRs now in the company.
OKRs are?
So goals basically similar to KPIs, but
what's the difference between?
The KPI is a very specific. It's a very specific goal.
Key performance indicator.
Exactly. Where an OKR is more on a longer term, and.
Right. And OKRs, are they the thing to be doing these days?
So big successful companies always look at accountability and longer goals, with specific numbered goals for each of the team members. So we're implementing. We have very clear objectives, and we try to align on a weekly basis to make sure that we steer the company into the right direction.
Yeah. And are you doing this in an office?
So we spend most of the time in the field. We have a shared office space we spend time in Nairobi garage or in Kigai, but I try to spend most of my time and my team's time in the field because I strongly believe that this is a field business. If we are not in the field, then we become too comfortable, and then we stop understanding the needs of the market. One of our advisors was telling us a few months ago, saying you can always fail to achieve a certain revenue goal, but what you can't fail to achieve is understanding the needs of those doctors better even than the doctors themselves. So we spend time with the doctors, understanding what they need, understanding how can we help, understanding their behavior to be able to bring the products, the technology, and the solutions that would make them make more revenue and thrive, and serve better eventually their patients.
Yeah. Okay. Why is it called Ilara Health?
It's a good question actually. The reality is that we started. We wanted initially to launch this business in Nigeria, and we called the company Ilara with an E instead of an A. Ilara in Yoruba means health. And then we changed from Nigeria to Kenya for a number of reasons that we understand better Kenya. We felt I've been in and out Nairobi for the past 4 years. Aman, my co-founder, his family comes from East Africa. Easier to do business, so we decided to start in Kenya, and we changed the name from Ilara into Ilara.
Right. Does Ilara mean something in Kenya?
Not really. I mean, there's a milk brand, there's a dairy brand here, but nothing else.
And will so let me think. So that the patient, the lady who's coming in for the ultrasound, what's her experience? What's her relationship with the ultrasound? Should we say? So is it that she's feeling this is a white label product which my clinic is offering? Is it that, this is actually an Ilara Health ultrasound? Is it that this is the actual manufacturer's thing, but it just, where does Ilara Health, where does the name Ilara Health, like, who does that?
That's a very good question. So specifically for ultrasound, women know that they need an ultrasound. The question is, do they afford or not? Can they get an ultrasound somewhere close to the place where they live? And that's where those small clinics are, and there are plenty. They may not afford to come to Nairobi, take a matatu, spend 150 shillings back and forth when they're pregnant, and take time off work. Are they? I mean, those ultrasound machines, they're not an Ilara brand, but they come from reputable companies around the world, which have gone through the approval process in the US or Europe and in Kenya. So the quality of the brand, and actually the quality of the result, which is a color image, which is very clear for a sonographer, finally is less of the patient, but is the sonographer, the person who performs ultrasound, who need to vouch for the device. And before choosing the right the brand that we have today, we've been testing a number of brands, 3 of them actually, with sonographers in their offices and in the field. And we've done the same thing for the blood test machines that we have currently in the market, to make sure that the one that we place in the clinics is the right one, which answers to the needs of the market. Typically, a color ultrasound is needed versus a black and white. A certain mode, an M mode, is needed to identify certain conditions of the baby, of the fetus, and that's how we've got to the products that we distribute today. Now, Ilara brand. We believe that what we can build here is really bringing those clinics to a certain level. They're very different. They're small. They don't have a name. They don't have a color of the wall. They don't have assets. They don't have processes. They don't have IT. They may not have even beds. So there's a lot of stuff to do inside those clinics. So diagnostic devices is just the first step to put a foot in the door of the clinic. But as we can help with other things, as I said, with platform, with processes, and eventually bring all those clinics, or some of them at least, to a certain level, where they could become a clinic X by Ilara Health, where Ilara Health can become a brand, which would equate with quality of service, of devices, of doctors, of processes, and finally quality of care. That's what a patient in sick needs care.
Because so at the moment, your ultrasound devices or whatever, they're in a clinic. A patient could come in, have an ultrasound, get their receipt from the clinic, walk out, and have no idea that Ilara Health has had any involvement with that clinic.
Today, no.
Today, no.
They don't know.
Today, they won't know. But the idea is, in the future, it's almost like this. You call it a franchise model?
It's a franchise or reverse franchise model, indeed.
Reverse franchise. What's the difference?
Somehow the models where you basically don't go and your brand don't go and then finance someone to open a store, but go into an existing establishment. Call it franchise.
Okay, but you basically you go and you sort of say, right, you're a business, you're an independent business, you're already here. If you play by these rules, then you can call yourself Ilara.
You become part of the network.
Yeah, and not only that, I imagine the sell is, we're also going to make you better.
Exactly.
And that's good.
But that's the end goal.
Yeah, got it. Is this something which is like quite a few years down the line, or is this something where it's like might be a bit sooner?
Obviously, it's going to take time. I mean, there are a couple of examples here. There's a Tunza brand, which is it's an NGO which gives training and I think some financing to some clinics, and it has become a brand. Tunza clinic is recognized as a good clinic. This model exists in education in India, exists in hotels in India, China, US, Europe. So the model where a brand or a brand comes and brings a number of individual businesses to a certain level exists. It's going to take time. It's going to take time, and diagnostics is the first step. Probably pharmacy is the second step. Education, training of those doctors is another step. And eventually bringing other assets, other devices. So a lot of clinics tell us if we had $10,000, we would love to buy a small operating theater for C-sections, because they could make revenue. They could provide these small surgeries to patients, and they can't. As we go, we'll discover more opportunities.
Okay, cool. What have been some of the surprises that have sort of come about in months you've been doing it?
So one interesting thing is, before we started this business, I thought that there is a high demand for financing, but those clinics, which are businesses finally, can just not access financing. What we find now, we find also a number of cases where the owners of those clinics run away from financing. They have that perception that banks would never give them loans, and the banks would ask them for collaterals, which are impossible to provide. And they have this image of this, how do you call them, shark loans. Mm-hmm. Some of them actually take loans at 30% interest rate per month to be able to pay salaries, knowing that they will get revenue in the future. So some of them are actually concerned when we talk loans. So we actually have changed significantly the way we present this. It's fine, it's not a loan, it's an asset that we place and they pay back for a service. So there's no interest rate as such. It's a bundle payment.
This I think is one of the nuance, or one of the one of the features of the solar industry here. Yeah. In these solar panels is that, effectively people, someone comes along, puts a solar panel on their house, and they pay $5 a month to keep the electricity on. Behind the scenes, actually, that's quite a sophisticated asset. Well, no, not sophisticated. It's quite a simple asset financing, but it doesn't feel to the end customer like, this is my thing that I'm paying. So you're basically taking.
So I'm taking this experience from solar companies which I've looked at or invested in the past and being close to. So we apply a lot of. We try to take from solar what has worked and avoid what hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. I think another thing which changed my perception. I was under the impression that there are not enough medical establishments. I've started to change my perception. There are so many. We see every day. So we have a database of 10,000 clinics across Kenya, which is the government database. Mm-hmm. I found already about 50% of the clinics that we see, they're not in that database. So I think there are more than that. Are they 13, 15,000? I don't know yet. So I don't think there is a lack of establishments, but there is a clear lack of training and skills. Amongst the 200 clinics that we've stepped into to date, I may have seen 5 doctors, doctors. Mm-hmm. All those clinics have nurses or clinical officers, which can perform can do consultations. They can even perform basic surgeries, but they're not doctors. So they badly need training. So that's where we come now, and typically with the ultrasound device, we provide training. We teach them how to perform a pregnancy ultrasound. We cannot teach a clinical officer to become a sonographer. Absolutely not. That's a 1 to 2 years, medical or pre-medical school. But we can teach someone to provide a basic pregnancy ultrasound, potentially with a real sonographer on the other side of the line. So the device that we bring now has a embedded telemedicine, telesonography functionality.
Is it almost like you're on Skype?
So it's exactly.
Exactly.
So because the device is connected to a camera, and then the doctor or the sonographer on the other side has access to the image and can actually freeze the image, can do whatever a sonographer in front of a big ultrasound with buttons can do: freeze the image, increase the image, stop the image, print the image, measure. Same for the blood. So we have a device now which does a lipid profile and HbA1c, so the diabetes markers. We've seen actually in the beginning, at least for one of the tests, the results were actually fluctuating a lot, and we tried to understand why. The device comes from Taiwan, has been CE approved, has been tested in Europe, even in India, and they haven't had this problem before. And we realized that the problem comes from the manual part of the process, which is actually equates to training. Training how to drop that blood drop exactly in the place where the drop needs to go for the device to function properly. So training plus automation, or just automation. So this is the other thing that we discovered. We thought that just automation can actually replace a skill. Not true. And finally, it's just about people. People perform. People give care. A machine cannot deliver the feeling of care. It can deliver a result, but cannot deliver a feeling. So you still need people, doctors or clinical officers or nurses. It's very difficult to replace them. And I don't think that the pure machine or telemedicine will work anytime soon here. So we are in a people business where we want to train and upscale those medical officers or clinical officers to get to that level of skills to operate our devices while performing or giving care.
Got it. Yeah, I can see that.
So we also have an education part of the business.
When it comes to learning how to use this company's blood test machine, is that a cost that you incur, that Ilara incurs?
So we blend this in our service fees. Obviously, we perform a training initially, which is part of the sales process, and we even this morning I had a meeting with a potential partner on teletraining for the clinics. Face-to-face is very important. Face-to-face in the clinic is super important, but we need continuous training. So we haven't yet figured out how we'll do that, at scale. We do it now for the ultrasounds. We do it now for the blood. For every device we deliver, we place, we train. But we need to find a sustainable solution to perform continuous training.
Makes sense. If we just sort of go back a few steps, I'm interested in exploring this crinkle you mentioned about the financing and how you've got these third-party financing organisations, which are the ones actually putting up the money. I sort of can get how, from your perspective, not having those assets on your balance sheet is useful. It is a good characteristic to have. How does that complicate the operation you've got when you've then got this extra party who's needing to...
Actually, it simplifies. The reality simplifies because the reality in this case would broker a relationship between a clinic and a lender. And we're in a business of enabling.
So is the clinic, are they paying one payment to you and one payment to the...
The clinic would pay actually a down payment to us.
Yeah.
And they will pay principal plus interest to the leaser, to the loan provider. So in this case, there won't be there will not be a usage fee. There will be a one-off fee so the clinic pays us a certain amount in the beginning.
So if they say like 10% down.
Yeah, 10% down, and they will enter in a lease agreement with the provider. So in this case, for those clinics, we would be just an asset provider and a trainer, while the credit risk and the lending relationship is between the lender and the clinic. In the clinics where we believe that they cannot get a loan for a number of reasons, and we pre-assess them, then we lend, or then we place a device.
With the case where you've got this external lender, so the clinic is paying, was it a monthly fee?
They'll pay a monthly fee or a daily fee, actually.
A daily fee, okay.
Which is equivalent to an interest rate, which is a market-based interest rate.
I'm more interested in the dynamics of like you having this relationship with the clinic and saying like we're the ones who are providing this ultrasound machine, and then the payment actually going somewhere else. And like if the ultrasound suddenly breaks, like whose responsibility is that?
Those machines are actually, they have a manufacturer warranty for the first year. So and we priced in the price of the asset. We priced another year. It's an additional year of local all risk warranty or all risk insurance actually, which covers everything from breakage to theft to malfunction.
Okay. So for the 2 years.
So for 2 years, the clinic for the length of the loan, the clinic is covered. Post this, obviously, we're still. Finally, like any distributor of medical devices, we end up representing the brand. So we'll provide a service, obviously at a cost, if needed.
And that will be basically from the financier's perspective. They're saying, right, we're going to put down this money. every day we're going to get paid, and for the duration of 2 years, at the end of it, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, because it's a lease to own. Finally, the goal is this asset to become the full ownership of the clinic, so the clinic can capture the full revenue instead of paying the interest and the principal back.
Yeah. And who are these financiers?
So we've been we have a couple. We started to work with the Medical Credit Fund, which is part of Farm Access here. The Medical Credit Fund offers a digital loan as well as an asset loan, both of them based on the digital revenue potential of the clinic. And they collect payments on a daily basis, actually, on the per transaction basis from those clinics. The Medical Credit Fund currently focuses on bigger establishments, so we're trying to bring them into those small, medium to small size and low income clinics. We are working with a bank here, CDM Bank, to enable the same type of lending, but on a pure bank type loan. And we look at other debt providers. We're in touch with 2 others.
Okay.
So we'll see how these relationships will evolve. We actually have the first 5 clinics with ultrasounds. We already have 4 clinics in the market, part of a pilot that we started in March with smaller devices, which we did on balance sheet. We just bought them and placed them just to understand the clinic processes and how we can do the collection. The real business starts now with the first 5 clinics, which we train this coming weekend, with ultrasound devices, and a couple of them will be financed through the Medical Credit Fund, and the rest will be, the other half will be on balance sheet. So that's a first trial to see how this is going to evolve. And as I said, we've been stepping into about 200 clinics, and some of them are in various stages of discussions in the sales or placement process. And as soon as we're done with those 5, we'll move into the other selected clinics from the pipeline. The goal is to get to 60 to 100 clinics. Probably 60 clinics by the end of the year, and probably another 100 in the 6 months, first 6 months of next year.
Great. We'll just do a few more questions.
Sure.
That's all right. So we've spoken sort of a bit about the supply side, a bit about the demand side. From your perspective in working in this health, or you're working in the health market, should we say? I think what's quite interesting is you're saying you're viewing medical devices as the first step into opening up this potentially much bigger market around improving clinics and potentially one day doing a reverse franchise or franchise with it. What are some other interesting opportunities that you're seeing within the medical area, which you're like, that's really great, it's not for us right now, but someone else should do that?
Sure. So a clinic, if we look at what are the needs of one of those small clinics, so they need diagnostic devices, they sell medication, so pharma products, and that's a massive market. We're not yet there. Other people do it now. We may be there one day, so we're looking into it. They need education, so training, face-to-face or distant. They may need remote telemedicine solutions, and they need other assets apart from the diagnostic devices. I think I mentioned earlier, some of them need beds, others need operating theaters. So I believe there's a huge opportunity into enabling those clinics to perform whatever they need to and where they have patients for, and provide better care through training, devices, inpatient, surgeries, and medication.
And you may not have that much exposure to it, but I'm interested, outside of clinics, are there any other areas where you think other entrepreneurs should come in and do particular?
Specific in healthcare?
Sure.
Or in...
Oh, but actually, go on. You've looked at lots of businesses. What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, in general.
Yeah. Let's go in general. Yeah.
Sure. So one thing I think comes from seeing a lot of businesses in Africa is, and I have this I always compare Africa to China and to the US. And in the US you can build a pure tech platform because you have the infrastructure, you have the infrastructure there. In China, most of the technology businesses today have built infrastructure over time. And you look at Alibaba. Alibaba even has clinics, by the way, or Tencent actually has clinics. So they build technology alongside infrastructure, right? In Africa, the problem is the infrastructure is inexistent. So Africa is, in my opinion, very much about distributed things, distributed solar, distributed diagnostics. That's what we do, right? We bring pieces of a lab into a clinic. Distributed everything, distributed logistics. So there is a massive opportunity in a number of sectors, and we've seen very successful companies here tackling the biggest needs of the consumers, which are actually still fairly basics. People need to eat, so they need to get fruits and veggies, they need to get FMCG products. There are companies tackling this with distribution and financing. Business is selling various products. There are companies doing lending, markets, B2B lending, which is massive, and there's still a lot of place here. Education, with a fund I was involved for 4 years. We invested into one of the most successful, or the most successful education technology company in Africa, based in South Africa, which sold to a US listed education online company. So education is massive. I haven't seen too many ed tech companies across the continent, unfortunately, but I think there's still a huge need. Someone will need to come and find the right model, the right profitable model. How to deliver online education or on mobile education. Within financial technology, there's so much need. Kenya is somehow lucky with mobile money, but there's so many other countries in the continent where it's very difficult to pay, very difficult to send money somewhere, very difficult to capture money as a merchant. Very difficult to get money as a merchant on a product loan. So bottom line, the kind of the biggest sectors that I think are the most interesting are fintech. Obviously, within the $1 billion venture capital money invested in Africa last year, about 35% I think was fintech. I don't remember exact the number from Disrupt Africa or from Partech, but fintech is a massive sectors. Within fintech, there are a lot of subsectors, some of them more profitable, more interesting than others, more impactful than others. But financial inclusion is super super needed. Education, mobility, massive. People move, right? Those cities, Kenya is still massively rural or actually moving from rural to peri-urban. But those cities those African cities actually double in size in the next 10, 15, 20 years. And people need to move from one place to the other. Using technology to help those people moving is super important. Yeah, so healthcare, education, electricity, so distributed electricity, solar, renewables, moving people from A to B, moving freight from A to B, moving food or other things inside the cities.
And any words of warning or words of caution for people who are thinking of coming into setting a business in this part of the world?
So this is not Silicon Valley. This is Africa. Those are emerging markets where I think the point of caution is a lot of people think that they can build top line revenue with no profitability or no vision for profitability, and they can raise another round and another round and another round. That's less possible in Africa because from an investment perspective, if we look at macroeconomics, in Africa it's still far in terms of returns compared to Europe or to the US or Asia, right? So a PE firm would say, why should I invest in Africa when I can make a great return in the US, Europe or China or Southeast Asia? But Africa is the future. I think Africa is the only place in the world which still has this massive potential of huge population growth, huge mobile penetration, huge very, very young people. And it's funny, I was a very good friend of mine runs one of the successful technology companies based in Barcelona, and I was having a call with him a few weeks ago, and he was telling me, why are you why are you spending your prime, well, even if I'm not even yet prime, but what prime years in Africa? And I was laughing. I said, well, let's talk in 5 years from now. So I have a massive belief in this continent. I've been in Africa, even if I'm not born in Africa, but I've been in Africa for the past 12 years plus, in and out, and mostly living actually out of those 12 years around. So I see the massive opportunity, and I still think it's going to take time, because it's not just about technology; it's about growing the spending power of people to be able to buy those products and services. But again, I would be very careful, and that's what we try in Ilara Health as well. Very careful on how to go towards profitability, towards building a profitable, high margin business, but which can be impactful in the same time and bring value to everyone. Bring value to our clients, our customers, bring value to our investors, bring value to us.
Very good. And people listening at home, how can they learn more about Ilara Health, learn more about you? What are the best ways for them to learn more?
Sure, we are online. We have a website. There are a couple of articles which got published last week as we closed our first our seed round. So we've been in the media lately. People can find me on LinkedIn.
Very good. Cool. Well, it looks like it's about to start raining, so we should probably call it.
Excellent.
But yeah, thanks so much, Emilian.
So
really
thanks
good.
a lot. And then, thanks for your time.
Perfect. Cheers.
Very excited.
Before we head, just a quick moment to say thank you for listening. You can see show notes for this episode by heading to the new website, www.theeastafricabusinesspodcast.com. If you'd like to learn more about the show and the work we do, then you can have a bit of an explore on the website and also subscribe to the various places such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and email. Finally, if you felt this was a good episode and you've been enjoying the show recently, then please do consider leaving a rating for the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. You could also tell a friend who's curious about these sorts of businesses that we feature. And indeed, if you know of a business that you'd like to be interviewed on the show, please feel free to reach out via any of the channels mentioned above, and we'll see what we can do to have an interview and showcase them on the show. In any case, have a great week and speak to you soon.